was your childhood like in Northampton, and how did you get into music?
I've got a flood of responses to that, trying to focus in on what I should tell you. I mean, I was mad about football, watching the World Cup in the moment. My inspiration was George Best. George Best's poster on my wall above my bed. I was obsessed with the whole thing, and had crazy dreams that I would be a footballer.
Right.
And then I broke my leg when I was 14, really badly, playing football. And I found out later they were so bad that they were actually praying for me in assembly.
Oh, wow.
And they reckoned that I would have one leg a foot shorter than the other because it was that bad. And also tore my cartilage. I broke my ankle. This kid did a flying tackle, both feet in the air, and came down hard. Wow. So I was in hospital recovering from that. And I was in a ward with 10 other blokes. I was a kid in there. And they had a Radio 1 on. And they just played it during the day. And one time, T-Rex came on, Hot Love. And I went into this. I think I was on some sort of heavy-duty painkillers. But I went into this kind of, which probably assisted this experience. I went into a kind of trance. And I was just completely transported by that music. And I remember looking at that. I can remember looking at the shafts of sunlight coming in the ward and dust motes floating in the air. It's just the whole atmosphere of it. And I just went away. And so all the chatter and all the sounds of the ward just kind of were filtered into this muffled nothing. And all I could hear was Mark Bolan singing this song. And I sort of came out of this reverie, not wanting to be a footballer anymore, but wanting to be Mark Bolan. I didn't want to be. I traded George Best for Mark Bolan, and that was a big moment. And then after that, I really, I rejoined the T-Rex fan club, the only fan club I've ever been a member of. And it was a big thing, and then Bowie came along very shortly after that. And then the whole, glam thing and Roxy music. And I just went down that rabbit hole. Yeah. And I've never come out, and I don't want to come out. And I found some of my school friends were also similarly affected by the same things, so they became real close mates, And out of that little group, we formed what would you loosely call a band. And there was one guy, Chris Day, he had a guitar. He was the only kid in school who had a guitar, and he was teaching himself to play. And I got intrigued in that, and I'd go around to his house and he'd show me how to play songs from Ziggy Stardust. So that was formative as well, and it was also a revelation to me that you could actually, after a fashion, make your own personal version of these recordings. I'm actually nothing like the recordings, but an approximation, I wasn't familiar with chords. I didn't know what a chord was on a guitar, but he showed me, and then I had some other lessons from a guy called Jim Tyso, a bit more advanced. I mean, aside from that, it was my childhood. It was pretty ordinary, really. Yeah. I went to a pretty average school. I did go to my mum and dad had a newsagent tobacconist, and they became quite successful. They were both from very poor backgrounds, from working class. My mum from Birmingham, dad from Northampton. And that business took off, mainly because of my mum's sort of canny business sense. Yeah. And they made some money, and so they decided to send myself and my brother to a minor public school in Wellingborough. And that gave my education a big boost, because it was so far ahead of, the secondary modern schools. But I didn't like it because it was pretty draconian. Yeah. And so I left after 2 years, and I went to Western Favour Upper School, and I was ahead in all the classes, and but soon slipped back, because I wanted to have a bit of fun, and so everything apart from English kind of went by the wayside. I loved English, and art, and then I went to art school, and when I left, that was an obvious thing to do, and music was very, very much present in art school.
Yeah.
The student, the older students would bring in albums, and I'd get exposed to a lot of music in the common room. You could take it in turns to play the record player. So all of this is formative.
How did you take the next step into performing after just learning how to play the guitar?
Very quickly, really, because when we had this band in school, we wanted to play, but it was ridiculous. I mean, it wasn't like a solid group of individuals. It was changing all the time, and there was like about 8 guitarists. Everybody wanted to be the lead guitar player.
Yeah, of course.
And initially I did as well. I wanted to be a guitar player, but nobody wanted to play bass. So I volunteered to play bass because the other music I was really into, really the first music I got into, before I identified music with personas, just pure music, was reggae.
Uh-huh.
And I sussed out that the bass was pretty important to reggae. Yeah. And I loved it, I loved the bass parts in reggae, so that was appealing to me, and nobody else was interested at all in playing bass, so I volunteered. Took the 2 top strings off of my cheap electric guitar and turned all the treble down on my amp and all the bass up, and that was my first bass guitar.
Right.
Yeah. But then as soon as we got together playing, we wanted to have a band playing live, so we played at the school, in the school hall. There was some sort of event, and we somehow blagged our way onto that. And we played in a youth club on the stage, but the first time when it really sort of cohesed was when we got together. My brother and I got together with 2 other kids. One of them been playing electric guitar for a while, and he's really good. And Roger Rideout and this other friend, Dave Stretton, and we formed this band called Jam. No relation to the other Jam.
Right.
And I don't know, it kind of gelled. And we started just doing covers originally, but pretty soon we also started writing our own songs. And we would play in working men's clubs at the weekend. We'd go up to like Doncaster and places like that. And that was great fun, We just hire a transit van, just haul all the gear off and play these gigs. We'd play, in between the bingo master. And
I remember those, yeah.
The comedian and the female impersonators.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was the start of it. And pubs. So then we went into pubs, and because we were all drinking then, 16,
Yeah.
drinking pints. And that's where it started. And there were several bands that followed Jam, and Daniel came into the mix then, because I met him at art school.
Right.
Daniel Ash.
Yeah.
And it was usually my band. I would have a concept for the band, and I would kind of be the band leader. But I'd always let everybody have their say, and it's just that I was very driven in that way and just full of ideas. So that's the way it panned out, and that's why Daniel, when he formed what would become Bauhaus, he didn't want me involved because he didn't want me to take it over.
Right.
He wanted to be the leader in a way,
Yeah.
or at least have much more of a say than he figured he would have if I was in a band. And they had a bass player, but then they fired him, and then Daniel asked me to join. Yeah, and I loved I'd seen them rehearsing, and I thought they were great, so I didn't hesitate, even though I was booked to go to Germany to play on American air bases for this funk disco band.
Right.
I just learned like 60 of those kind of tracks.
Yeah.
Ready to go. And I think it was about 3 days before I was due to leave. Daniel knocked on my door. But I didn't have to think twice about it. And I checked in with that band leader, and he was cool about it. And then,
So, didn't you go to quite a few reggae clubs as well around that time?
I went to, initially I used to go to the skinhead disco when I was like 14. We weren't supposed to be there. We used to sneak in, and that was very exciting. And then later on, that's before I was playing music, just listening. And then later on, because there's a lot of Rastafarians in Northampton, so they had this every month or twice a month. They'd have this event at this Africa Centre where they'd have sound systems, and it would be a big deal. They'd paint everything in the colours of the Ethiopian flags. It'd be like, and that would be the theme, like all gold 1 week. Women would dye their hair. The guys would wear gold suits, and they had slogans by Haile Selassie written around the walls. It was a real full tilt. And amazing sound systems, and they would have the sound systems come up from London, some from up north, and they had goat's head soup.
Right.
And just, obviously tons of ganja.
Yeah.
And we'd just go in there and we'd be the only white guys. I mean, me, Kevin, Daniel, and a couple of other mates. And we got a few weird looks when we first went in, and it was obviously we were just there to take music, and they were very friendly, and then they got to know us, so
yeah.
It was really cool and amazing to hear that music and that kind of place. And influential on us, for sure, and the records were influential, the reggae and dub.
Yeah.
I'd go down to London at weekends and buy, all the reggae imports, Daddy Cool's, places like that, Green Sleeves.
So, Bauhaus at the time, what sort of band was that before you joined, or just after you joined?
It was very minimalist, which I really liked. Everything was really stripped down, and I loved that. And that was the idea, that's what Daniel was going for. And I thought, when I saw them, when I was an outsider, I thought of the Bauhaus movement.
Yeah.
It was like Bauhaus to me, I'd learned about that at art school. And I was struck by that. So when I finally did join and we were looking for a name, I thought back to that and I suggested Bauhaus. Bauhaus 1919, which is when it was formed. And they were familiar with Bauhaus, so they liked it and thought, yeah, it's a good name.
You wrote, obviously, the first single, A Bela Lugosi's Dead. You're the one that wrote that.
Well, I wrote the lyrics, and everybody, created their part.
When you write a song, what comes first? Is it the words or the music?
It's nearly always the words.
Yeah.
It certainly was in the case of Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the meter of the lyric kind of dictates or suggests the form of the music, the rhythm of the music.
What inspired it? Because it's quite an unusual sort of lyrics, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just a series of old horror films on TV. Like every week they'd have a different horror film.
Yeah.
And the classics, Frankenstein, Werewolf, and then Dracula with Bela Lugosi. And Daniel and I had both been watching these, and we're just on the phone one time, and that had been on the night before, Dracula. I said, "Oh, Dan, did you see that Dracula last night?" So yeah, he was really good, Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that, saying how his voice, that Hungarian accent really kind of added to the mystique of the character. It was perfect, he had a perfect kind of visage and demeanour for it.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of taken with that film, and I was working in a warehouse packing up boxes
right.
shipped, and I had all these labels in my pockets, and I was riding my bicycle home after one of those boring days, and the lyric just came to my mind. Pretty much like in sequence as you hear it.
Yeah.
And so every now and again I'd stop and write down some lines on these packing labels.
Right.
Green, orange and red labels.
Right.
By the time I got home I had the lyric. And I just transcribed it on a sheet of paper, which I handed to Peter, like the next day at a rehearsal. I've come up with something here.
Was Peter already in the band when you joined?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When you first started to put the song to everyone and he started singing it, did he sing it pretty much as you imagined he would sing it?
Pretty much as you hear on the record. And I imagined it like that, yeah, but he got it even better than what I'd imagined.
It's quite a long single, isn't it? Did you ever? Because I mean, there's a story about obviously Bohemian Rhapsody and how they were always told it was too long to be a single. Yeah. Did you get the same thing with?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were shopping it around to labels, they all said that. Yeah, can you condense it? Can you edit it down? And the only one who didn't say that was Pete Stennett at Small Wonder. Because we told him, he said, no, fuck that. You want to keep it as long as it is. He said, it's like Sister Ray, the Velvet Underground. You hear every note. He said, just don't cut out a second of that song. He said, it's perfect as it is. He was right.
Yeah.
We started to second guess, like, maybe we should edit it, because we didn't know.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of dub on that single, isn't there? How long did it take to create?
Oh, not long at all.
No?
We went for a day and we recorded and mixed that plus 4 other songs.
Right.
So it's pretty spontaneous. I mean, we recorded it all in one go, vocals and all.
Yeah.
First take. That's the first take. And we got it down.
Yeah.
And we knew it was the one, and the engineer agreed. Eric Tompkins, and we said, all right, let's, because we said we want to put some echo on it, and he had the right kind of echo. He had this analog, this great tape echo.
Yeah.
That was in the studio. Because before that, we'd been using a WEM copycat.
Yeah.
Which was a great little thing, but echo unit, but this was even better. And the Rastas in town would come in and do their tracks there, so Derek, who owned the studio, was familiar with that. And this was the gear they used. So it was just perfect.
Yeah.
And Daniel did it like spontaneously as we were running it through. He applied that echo.
Right.
And it was the first time again, pretty quick.
Regarded as the Godfathers of Goth and all that sort of thing. Do you think that first song was a bit of a millstone for you because of the imagery and all that sort of thing that came with it?
Yeah, it was, because we were very into expanding our musical horizons, and we were into all different genres of music, and that is very evident. I mean, on the second album, Mask, I mean, there's like funk in there, there is some disco there, it's kind of twisted disco, but it's disco, and there's dub in there, it's like avant-garde, weirdness, some rock and roll. It's still like, but it's cohesive, it's got a real strong flavour, but it's not. You wouldn't call it, typically like gothic music.
No. There wasn't really any sort of gothic music around when you made that first single. I mean, places like Batcave came later, didn't it? A couple of years later.
Yeah. It was post-punk.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were always very, as you said, quite experimental as a band. How did that work as a band?
No, we were all into that.
Yeah.
We loved doing that, yeah. And often if we had a BBC session, it seems very cavalier, think back, but we would go in purposely, we'd have maybe 1 or 2 tracks worked out, and then 2 that we're just going to do totally on the spot, not even use our instruments, use whatever's in there. We did that a couple of times, and just use it as a platform to experiment.
The second album, you started to experiment with, a different range of instruments and just making sort of, using instruments to make sounds rather than play them, to get the atmospheres and that sort of thing. Was any of that electronic as well? Did you use a lot of mixers and things like that to get those effects?
Yeah, no, we loved that. We had a Wasp synthesizer. We used Space Echo. We used the Sinair drum, electronic drum, and an electronic drum pad. Really into electronic music. I got into Can when I was at art school.
Yeah.
Loved that band. And Kraftwerk at art school as well. We went to see them, really early gig altogether. It was 81, we'd see them. And then Suicide, into that band.
Uh-huh. I always thought that your music was very similar to, because there's a lot of people that sort of came out of that post-punk period, people like Jim Thirlwell, with Fetus and that sort of thing,
yeah,
and Swans even, and they, obviously they don't want to be called industrial because they're not, it's just more experimental, and I think in a lot of ways you were very similar as a band as well, weren't you, because you were very experimental, there was no sort of fixed genre there at all,
Yeah, we also like bands like Cabaret Voltaire, Bad Gadget, Throbbing Gristle, or pop group, contemporary with us at the time. I think it was a great time for music.
Oh yeah,
really exciting time. Tuxedo Moon, San Francisco, who we did a very early gig with in London. I mean, we were just individuals dressing in a certain style that resonated with each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure. I mean, when you're going on the stage, you just amp it up a bit. But it's basically, what we'd wear on stage was pretty much what we wore all the time.
How did you get the title Burning from the Inside?
It's a funny story, because Daniel and I, they were setting up for a mix when we were making that album in Monmouth, residential studio, and we went out into Derek's car. Derek was the engineer from Beck who was working with us. We brought him in to do the knob twiddling, and we were just having a break, and we were in Derek's car smoking a spliff,
right,
listening to the Beatles, and we were so out of it, we set fire to the carpet.
Right.
And it was on fire, and there was some detritus in there as well that caught fire.
Right.
So it was like, the car's on fire. What? The car's on fire. and then I came up with this as we were going into the studio to tell poor Derek what we'd just done. I said, God, it was burning from the inside. And then Dan said, that could be a title. I said, yeah, Derek's car, in parenthesis, burning from the inside. We dropped Derek's car, but burning from the inside stayed. That is the true story.
That's brilliant. I always think that the bassists are the most important part of a band, because they sort of carry everything, don't they?
Agree.
But they sort of link all they link all the music, don't they? They've got the link between everything else, haven't they? They're the most important part of it, I think.
It's the foundation.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Foundation. Yeah. So, and I've always thought yours was quite interesting. Very again experimental. So is it okay just to ask you how you got a couple of effects on a couple of your songs?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get that sort of sound on All I Ever Wanted?
That's actually a cello. I'm playing a cello.
Ah, okay.
Which I've never done before.
Yeah.
And playing it like a bass.
Yeah.
We got in a bunch of instruments that we couldn't really play. We had a harpsichord,
yeah,
a cello, so we had a violin, a viola, a accordion, all the weird stuff in there. And it was just lying around and just, there for grabs if you wanted to grab it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that's what that is.
That explains that, yeah. What about Double Dare? Because I can't quite work out how you're doing that either.
It's just a fuzz box.
Oh, is it?
Japanese fuzz box.
Yeah.
Electro harmonics fuzz box.
Right.
It wasn't even a pedal. It was. So I had it gaffer taped onto my guitar because it had a little switch on it.
Yeah.
So you couldn't put it on, like you would a pedal. It was just a real cheap thing, but it had a great sound.
Ah, that's interesting. Ah, okay, yeah, it makes sense now. So eventually, obviously, the Bauhaus just, you guys went your own way to do other things, didn't you?
Yeah.
So Love and Rockets, I'll just jump straight to Love and Rockets. How did all that come about?
Well, there's some misinformation about this, and it winds me up whenever I see it, because it says that the erroneous report is that we went separate ways, and then Daniel did Tones on Tail, and I joined the Jazz Butcher group and did some solo records, and then we wanted to get back together with Peter.
Right.
We wanted to get Bauhaus back together, and so we contacted him, and we set up a rehearsal room, but he didn't show up because he decided he didn't want to do it, so we had nothing better to do than just, the three of us are here. Let's try playing something, just us three. That never happened.
Right. Yeah.
And I was approached by Daniel asking me if I would join them, because he'd finished with Tones on Tail.
Yeah.
And he wanted to form a new band, and would I be into joining as a trio? And I was with the Jazz Butcher group at the time, and I was enjoying that, but I could see the potential of us three working together, and that was exciting. So, I said yes. It was just a fresh band, brand new venture.
Yeah.
So it was a breeze. It was joyous doing that band.
It sort of coincided with MTV as well, didn't it? Coming to prominence.
Yeah. That was fortunate. College radio.
Yeah.
Huge.
I remember seeing So Alive, which was a very brilliant video on MTV. I didn't realise to begin with. It took me a few minutes to realise it was Bauhaus. Well, not Bauhaus, but you guys from Bauhaus. But because it was a very sort of polished, poppier sound, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that track was, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, there's all different sides to Love and Rockets.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the zenith of that, more commercial part. But but there's a darkness to that. There's a melody that's quite dark, which makes it more intriguing, I think, that particular song.
Yeah. Love and Rockets is a comic book as well, isn't it? I didn't realise until the other day.
Yeah, that's where we got the name from.
Oh, was it? Yeah. Okay.
You nicked it. I did ask them though, and I got a phone call from one of the brothers, Jamie Hernandez.
Yeah.
And just because he'd heard that we were using their name, and he had said that he and his brother were going to form a band, and they were thinking of calling it Love and Rockets. I said, well, I can't argue with that, mate. He said, no. He said, I'd like to hear the music, so can you send me some music? So we sent him, we only had two things, like Ball of Confusion and a song called Inside the Outside. And he called me back, he said, yeah, okay, the music's cool, we like it, you can use the name. He said if the music had sucked, that would not have been the case.
Right.
So we had their blessings, so that was great. Yeah, it's a great comic book. I was a fan. I had all the issues with me, and we're trying to think of a name, and I just had them on my table as in the moment of us trying to think of the name, and I just picked up a comic and showed it to the others. Said, hey, what about this?
Yeah.
Love and Rockets. It was like, yeah, that's it.
Well, you're quite a Renaissance man, aren't you? I mean, you've done quite a lot of different things. Do you think that's all part of that entire need to keep experimenting and trying new things?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a curious fellow.
Right, yeah. Because you've written plays and things like that, haven't you, as well?
What's that?
You've written plays and the scores for plays as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
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 Well, what got you interested in writing plays?
Well, I had a publicist, Versa Manos, and she had a lot of ties with theatre and here in Hollywood. And she was just representing me as a musician, but she was in with this theatre company in Atlanta, Georgia, called Dad's Garage. a pretty well respected theatre company, and they wanted to put on a series of short plays, 15-minute in duration, like a program of like 8 plays like that, and run it for a couple of weeks in Atlanta. And they wanted submissions. They'd already got a couple of Tony Award-winning playwrights on board.
Yeah.
So it was like a high-quality setup. And Versa thought I'd be good at writing the play, 15-minute play. So she just put that to me and encouraged me to do it.
Yeah.
So I never thought about writing a play before. So I thought, okay, yeah, that is kind of exciting. And I thought, of the old thing, write about what you know.
Yeah.
So I wrote about being 19 in 76 and going to see the Pistols and the Clash and punk.
Yeah. Excellent.
And all of that.
Yeah.
And, oh, yes, right, you had to also use one piece of music. So the piece of music I used was Anarchy in the UK.
Brilliant.
And I called it Anarchy in the Gold Street Wimpy, because the Wimpy bars where we would all end up after going up the pub at lunchtime on Saturday. Would go there and go next door to Spinner Disc record and buy the latest punk single.
Yeah.
And then go down to the Wimpy, soak up the booze. So I wrote about that, and they got accepted input on, and they flew me out to Atlanta, and I loved seeing these really good actors interpret my words,
Yeah.
I really got the bug there, that it was like, oh, this is great, I love this. Then I thought, yeah, I'd be interested in like directing my own play.
Yeah.
And then again, I was just out of the blue, I was approached by somebody who wanted to put on a play in this theatre in East Hollywood, and they wanted me to come up with a play, anything goes. And what was in my mind at the time was Edie Sedgwick and that story, Andy Warhol. So I wrote a play about her. It's a play that's it uses Greek mythology, and so it's really that story told as Greek mythology. Edie is Persephone. It's her journey into the underworld, which is the silver factory, and Andy is Hades.
Right.
And then they have like Bob Dylan's Orpheus, and Cerberus, the 3-headed dog that guards the gates to the underworld, which is the 3 heads are 3 acolytes of Andy's, Undine, Chuck Wine, and Paul Morrissey.
Right.
And there's another character who's sort of like a Greek chorus. He's a half man, half horse in a wheelchair. He's a horse's head. And he narrates the story of what is going on in terms of the myth.
Yeah.
And then the other component is songs, like a song cycle, written in the style of Velvet Underground, acoustic, and I sing the lyrics from an objective point of view. So it's all these elements coming together. It went really well. It staged it eventually at the Red Cat Theatre here in LA, which is it's an international stage.
Yeah.
And I love doing that. I also did another one about the Black Dahlia murder.
Oh yeah.
Giving that a real surrealist angle, and that was good. And then I've got one coming up in 2024. I was approached by the Volks Theatre in Vienna. Again, giving me carte blanche to do anything. And so I'm writing something now about Egon Schiele.
Yeah.
The life of Egon Schiele, to be staged there. So yeah, I do love diversifying into those areas. Yeah.
Do you think it's the case that, just an observation of mine, that in the UK you tend to be sort of labelled as a musician, whereas over in the States you're more of an artist, aren't you? Would you say that's the case?
Yeah.
I mean, really generalistically,
I think it's because, I'm first known as a musician.
Yeah.
And then I left England and diversified all these other things, so I went to the States.
Yeah.
So, figures.
Sure, yeah. Okay, David. Well, thanks for this. I was trying to keep it as short as I can for you because I tried to keep them to about 40 odd minutes, But it's been a genuine pleasure, mate.